Here on The Colour of Country Life, we're speaking to Stephen Reid from Michelle Wool. Stephen, you're not in the country. Where are you?
Well, I'm in Italy visiting our customers. First trip outside of Australia in 2 years, and I must say it was very exciting to be heading to the airport on Sunday night. I was a bit sad to see my wife excited to see me leave as well, but two years together when I'm usually travelling, and I think she said something to the effect that we're married to be together forever, but not every day. I think I got the message.
So
I spent the week travelling in Italy, visiting our customers, and whilst Zoom and Team are all great, there's nothing quite like sitting down with them in their mills and actually understanding what's going on. So it's been a great week.
Yeah, whilst it's a business trip, for those of us somewhat imprisoned on the convict island, can you give us a bit of an insight about what it's like to be meeting people face to face? What's the reception from others to see someone from another country?
Well, the first reception is, as you'd expect, most people in the wool trade, we go to the same areas, stay in the same hotels, and the hotel staff are fantastic. First Aussie back, great to see you. So to be fondly warmed into the restaurants and the hotel was fantastic. But the customers also appreciate it because they want to know what's going on in Australia. The reciprocal is they haven't been able to see us for 2 years either. And it really is, I think, a tale of two cities. The underlying business for the mills over here is outstanding. They've got orders coming out of their ears, and up until the recent events in Ukraine and Russia, and the incredible lift in energy prices, they were on the brink of, particularly the knitwear producers, on the brink of having the best year in a couple of decades. So, and there's an expectation that that'll continue to happen. They've just got to deal with the issues of the day. And the issues of the day are obvious. We see it on the TV. Energy prices in Italy in particular have more than doubled. So a lot of the dye houses are no longer commercially viable. They're running 2 days a week or 3 days a week. A lot of the spinning plants, which use a reasonable amount of electricity, gas produced, are saying the same sort of thing. At these sort of gas prices, they can't go on. The logistic issues are huge. Stuff's turning up late. When it turns up, you can't get truck drivers because of COVID. Freight rates have gone through the roof. So in a positive way, most of the customers over here, particularly in knitwear, not so much woven fabrics, are positive, but they've got to deal with the issues of the day.
Yep, and markets always end up adjusting. The market must go on, and then whether it's on the supply or demand side, prices move accordingly. But look at Australian market in a minute. But what is the demand side looking like from Italy and the other European buyers?
Surprisingly good, actually. I must say, being over here and watching the news and listening to the radio, the issues in Ukraine are far more, in terms of the way it's portrayed to the public, are far more graphic. The images are just terrible, and it's kind of everybody's on their phone all day trying to get updates of what's going on. And I just reflect back to last week in Australia. I think we're a little bit sheltered from what's really happening.
Yeah.
So those events could change consumer sentiment and mood very, very swiftly.
And I guess
up until this moment, people are more positive than negative, and there's an expectation that somebody will resolve this ludicrous behaviour. I'm not sure if that's right or wrong, but people are genuinely more optimistic in terms of post-COVID and living with COVID, which is what's happening over here. People will get out, they've got to refresh their wardrobes, people want to look snappy again, and people are hoping that that's going to occur in the very near future.
Is a factor of that, keeping up to date with it, a bit of scar tissue generationally from World War II? People are worried about this conflict spreading broader?
Well, it's interesting. One of our clients is well into his 80s, and I don't know whether he's exaggerating to me. I've known him for, goodness, 35 odd years, but he said, he hears sirens on the TV. He's leaving the TV at night, which seems to be a crazy thing to do. And memories come back. He lived in the northern Italy, northern parts of Italy, and he sees the image of tanks, and he can remember that all happening. So it is close to home for people over here, and I guess being Australian, we see it and we can't quite relate to it. So there is some issues going on.
Now, you mentioned just before living with COVID. We know you've got some interest within China. Is China coping with living with COVID or COVID zero? How are they managing it?
No, taking a totally different approach, and we're fairly close to it with our factory up there. They've still got this zero COVID policy. There's some towns are having 17, 18 million people tested for COVID on 3 times in 10 days. Any issue of COVID within a business, within an activity, the whole thing is shut down. And to use that technical term, the wheels are falling off in China in terms of getting things done extremely, extremely quickly. Unloading in the ports, the number of vessels being held off port because they can't unload is doubled in 10 days. There's talk, and I haven't seen it confirmed, that Shanghai airport's been shut down. So those planes are being rediverted into other locations. Certainly goods going out has almost come to a grinding halt. And what we saw last time in the ports, they did unload vessels, but of course all the containers for the unloading got in the way for the ones that were being designed for export. So if this continues, and we've seen what happened last time, they locked everything down, it will take weeks, if not months, to sort out what's going on in terms of logistics. And this time it's a bit unusual to see airlines affected in airports, but it's an ominous sign.
Yeah, it's not a good sign for people like us, waiting for some computers to arrive. It sounds like processors is one of the things that are bogged up coming out of China.
Oh, absolutely. And unfortunately, on the way over here, I dropped one of mine. And as I stared down, I thought, please don't break because I won't get another one.
Yeah.
But it is like that. Certainly, any parts that we need for the manufacturing operations, you can't rely on them. So in a funny sort of way, a good thing's happening. You've got to become self-reliant. You've got to hold stock. You've got to be able to reproduce things and get things you need. So there is a little bit of a good news sign coming out of this, rather than just say, well, it broke, I bought another one, and there's plenty in stock. It's not like that anymore.
Well, that's a nice detailed mural of what's happening overseas. But let's look at what's happening in the Australian market over this last week. Are we seeing any evidence or ripples of what you're experiencing over there on the Australian market?
Yeah, there is. It was a pretty decent week, all things considered. The currencies are all over the place. So if you look at it in US dollars, which is an interesting way to look at it, that's the way the customer sees it, the market actually went up 7 cents. If you look at it in Aussie dollars, it actually went down 24. And of course, that's what growers receive. So you kind of wear two hats, particularly when you're travelling. You look at it both ways. The market across all merinos was down 25 to 30. Crossbreds, unbelievably, were down another 15, which puts crossbred wools at the lowest level they've been in 5 years. And I think I've been calling they can't get any cheaper. Clearly, my crystal ball's a bit foggy. Cardings were down 15 to 20 cents. Of the 45,000 bales put up, 17% were passed in. So that pass-in rate is getting up, and I think we talked about a pretty low pass-in rate recently.
Yeah, that's a big jump in the pass-ins.
It is, and it is a bit of a growers saying, well, I'm possibly cashed up. I won't accept a fall in the market, and I'll keep it in store, which is an interesting point because every wool store in Australia is bulging, and ours is the same. There's wool everywhere. All the wool dumps are refusing to receive any more wool because they can't actually get enough undercover. You can't get hold of containers. So I think there'll be a bit of pressure from brokers and exporters to growers to say there is no point sending it in if you don't want to sell it because we've got nowhere to store it, particularly with winter coming. So that whole supply chain, bringing up from what I said about China before, it is really being, again, technical term, bound up.
Yep, and I'm guessing with my cloudy crystal ball, that'd suggest that there's going to be less up at this stage for the auctions next week?
Well, there's meant to be 46 rostered, but I'll have a little wager, particularly from over here, that 42, maybe 43 will be offered. I'm guessing there'll be probably 15 to 20% passed in. And assuming the currency stays where it is, both against the euro and against the US, I suspect we're going to see another easing of the market next week.
All right. Well, we'll have that. We've got that on record now. We'll see how that turns out. We didn't talk about what the we didn't talk about what the wager would be.
Upset people. Yeah. Let me back in the country on Monday. If you can,
all right. Well, Stephen Reid, thanks for that detailed report from overseas. Glad you can get over and visit your customers again, and we're glad to have you back on Australian soil as well. Thanks very much for joining us today from Italy.
Always good to head home. I appreciate that, Ricky, and thanks for your interest in wool.